I've always been a smart girl, always made the grade, always got the gold star. I've always been a smart girl, but smart girl only gets a girl so far. You win at every single game, you want a quest, they tell you tough. If you don't go, you'll never know if you'll ever be good enough. My grand plan is that I will be remembered, and my grand plan, just you wait and see. You better wise up, 'cause I'll rise up, bring on any challenge, and someday soon someone will notice me. I've always been a tough girl, always been the one not to run from a fight, always been a tough girl, 'cause most girls never win if they're polite. So me, I tend to stand my ground, I've shown I never can give in. It may not be my quest, but maybe it's mine to win. My grand plan is that I will be remembered, and my grand plan, just you wait and see. You better wise up, I'll rise up, bring on any challenge, and someday soon the world will notice me, and your stepmom treats you like some free, and your dad won't give you the time of day, and your mom won't trust you with the quest, and so the best thing you can do is run away. Run away. But I have a plan. I will be remembered. I will be great. Just wait and see. No matter wise up, I'll rise up. Bring on any challenge, and someday soon I swear, I don't know how or when, but I promise you I'll never be invisible again. Someone will notice me. I've always been a smart girl.
Hi, I'm Jack Morgan. I report on arts and culture here. I've been doing it for about 10 years now. Having a blast. Welcome to Texas Public Radio. How many of you have not been here before? Quite a few. Pretty nice building, huh? I'm really glad to see everybody survive the walk from their car. God, it's hot. I used to complain constantly about this theater being too cold. I'm not complaining now. We're here to talk about performance art and performance artists, so I'd like to have you meet the panel here. We've got Anna DeLuna next to me. She's a theater performer. Yep. Tanesha Payne is to this end. And she is a dancer. We've got Brian Bondari. He's a musician and composer. If you need a musical composer, he's looking to compose a musical. So. And we got George Cisneros at the end from Urban 15. And Jessica Hawkins, a drag performer. All right, let's get this going. Start with you. Tell us about yourself. What's your earliest memory of performing?
I was living in a ranch about 30 miles south of here, but we had a little tiny TV, and I saw the Little Rascals, and I wanted to be one of them.
I bet you're a rascal.
And I thought, this is crazy. That's just a pipe dream. It's just ridiculous, because I was out in the rancho, you know, there was nothing out there but rattlesnakes and stuff. But I just couldn't take it anymore, you know, and so I was pretty shy So I didn't really start. I started pursuing like more music and singing, and I think it wasn't until college where I just couldn't take it anymore, and I just like I had to start auditioning for stuff. I was awful. My body would shake violently, and but thank God for some reason people started to cast me, and that's just really how it got started. Was
Give yourself a little credit too, you know.
you can't take it anymore. You know how it is when you're a performer. You're just like, it's got to come out. I can't hold it in.
Tanesha, how about you?
A similar story. So growing up at like family barbecues and reunions, I had to put on shows. I would make tickets and sell tickets to my family members for quarters. And they used to call me Baby Diana because my eyes were so big and I had big hair, like from Diana Ross. So yeah, that was it. And they were just like, make her sit down. After like the fourth show, they were like, we don't want to buy any more tickets. So yeah, probably around age 4 or 5, that's when it started, putting on the shows, selling tickets.
Neat. Brian Bondari, tell us about yourself.
So the earliest performing memory that I think I have must have been when I was 6 or 7. I was in Cub Scouts, and somebody dressed me up like a giant raisin, and I sang a solo from the California Raisins, song.
You could probably do that now.
I'm afraid I don't remember
No?
it.
Okay.
But I was the weird kid who didn't come from a musical family at all, and I was the one bugging my parents to let me take piano lessons at age 6 or 7, and they finally let me do so, and it's been a bit of a ride since then. I don't come from a line of musicians at all, so I was a black sheep of the family right there in that regard. But actually wanted to go to college as a biology pre-med major, and there was something about all the performing that I had done, particularly in piano and voice, that I still remember vividly my senior year of high school, the very last spring concert, where I just thought, this cannot be the end of that, and I've got to try this musicianship path and see what happens with it. And that was a dark day in the Bondari family when I told my parents that I was going to switch from the pre-med route to being a musician, but they tried their best to understand it. But it's been a good path, and I've ended up more on the composition side of things, and now I work at Trinity University as the composer. I joke that I'm the Beethoven or the Mozart on the faculty there.
Did your family ever kind of go, okay, he knew from the start what he was doing? No? No.
No, they never understood, but they just accepted it.
Okay. George, how about you?
Well, I think that the first time I was performing had nothing to do with music. It was always storytelling to get myself out of trouble. Maybe 5 or 6 years old by then. And, of course, our family always said you had to get into piano, and we got into that. But for me, the piano teacher finally went to my mom after about 3 years and said, "You're wasting your money. You should be a drummer." And so at about 8 or 9 is when I got involved with drumming and percussion. And but those first performances was really about storytelling. And that storytelling tradition, some of my siblings go into politics and I go into the arts, but it's the same tradition. We were trying to create an environment of believability. And that's what we all do as performers. We're creating environments of believability. And it comes at an early age. It's pretty natural when you figure out, hey, I gotta get out of this mess.
Wasn't it John Lennon who said, "We are all artists until our parents convince us that we're not"? Jessica.
I have come from a Mexican-American family on the south side, and I think it was a prerequisite to have a conjunto band in the family. And so my uncles and my tia they had a conjunto band. So half of the living room was divided into practice space, and the other half was the living room. And so there were 4 mic stands always there for 2 lead vocalists, background, and my aunt played the trumpet. And so I did not sing, but I did lip sing. And so I had an aunt that was our choreographer. So we're a little four-pack, a little foursome of bad kids. And we would put on shows in the conjunto space. We weren't allowed to touch the drum kit or anything, but the microphones were free range.
So they were actually microphones. They weren't just
Actual
mics.
real microphones, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
See a lot of encouragement from your family.
Absolutely.
Well, the next question, let's go there and come back this way. Why don't we? So do you have a muse for your work, or does that muse
Funny
switch?
you should ask. I am the MC La Voz de Los Mentirosos, Drag Kings, and we emulate, or at least I emulate my tío. So my uncle. So our aesthetic is your tíos at the quinceañera, your cool tíos at the quinceañera. So yes, my uncle Bene is my muse.
Was he a muse back then? Did he know where you were headed, or?
He just learned of what the heck I'm doing with his facial hair about 3 years ago. Said Chief Lo, he got really excited. He liked it. So I have yet to get him out to a show, but it's just because he's busy, you know. But he'll come. He'll make it out.
Neat. How about you, George?
A muse is a very strange concept. You know, I don't necessarily think I'm of a personality or a personification in terms of a muse, but the Santos and the have always, and the Orishas have always been part of my life in terms of muse and understanding. And I think that really the muse of my early life was the fact that I was hanging around with some men who had just come out of a horrible war, and their love of family and their love of, you know, just being alive, they were very inspiring. And you know, it was very spiritual to be around these veterans in the 50s, and they were all West Side and South Side guys, and they came home and got married, and they fell in love with San Antonio again. And that love of San Antonio was really drove the West Side into the music and the arts that we create. It's just, it's an amazing thing to be part of that experience, post-war San Antonio.
Neat. I should say that we do have a microphone. We have two or one. And if you feel real compelled to ask a question, you can go up and, you know, stand by the microphone. We'll call on you in a minute. Brian.
So back in more of my performing days with voice or piano, I wouldn't say I really had a muse, but when I was evolving more onto the composition side of things, then yeah, I guess in some way, I'd like to say that there's nothing more inspiring than a deadline. And so that has become, in a way, what my muse is. If somebody gives me a project and there's an ensemble that is going to perform it in 3 months, I need to have it done in, say, 1 month or 6 weeks so they have time to rehearse what they're going to do, then the muse is my deadline there, or the deadline is my muse, if you will. But I struggle with that idea at the same time as well, because in any creative endeavor, I guess if I put it to you like this, what if you hired a carpenter or maybe a cabinet maker to come to your house and build cabinets, and you talk with that contractor and say, okay, let's build some cabinets, and then you ask him, okay, so when are you going to have them built? And he says, I have to wait for inspiration. Who knows how long it might take then, but that's, I guess, where the deadline part builds back into that. So I think really for any of us, but particularly on the creative composition side, there's knowing that you have confidence in yourself to make that job happen and to be able to get it done on time. And that's the most inspiring thing I have.
All right. Tanesha.
So growing up as a young dancer, as a tall black young dancer, it was like, who looks like me out there? And so just Alvin Ailey's Judith Jameson was his muse, and she's a 6 foot tall, gorgeous black dancer. And so I have a picture of her in my little office space in my house, just as a reminder that you can do this as a big, tall black woman. So I think starting out, that was it. But as I start to create more, I think, or I know, it's the people that I work with. So in the different spaces, the works that I'm creating, whether it's a theater work or more of a contemporary work, the dancers, the human beings that are in that space and their stories and their experiences really become like the inspiration, right? I can come in with all the ideas, but then seeing that movement on someone else's body paired with their experience, like just, it's pretty magical. Yeah, so I think that the dancers, the movers, the creators that I work with in this space.
Neat. How about you, Anna?
I think that I was doing a lot of, other people's plays and performing for a long time. And it probably when I was in my mid 30s or early 30s, where I just always wanted to do solo work and write my own stuff. And I just kept hearing monologues in my head. And the muse at first was my own personal experiences. And so, or things that would just really freaking piss me off, And so that was easy, just like going off.
That's a big muse.
Yeah. And then, so I did some of that. And then I think some of the muses turned into people that I worked with, because I also work at the San Antonio AIDS Foundation. And I started working with all these clients that are positive, and I was doing a lot of education and hearing their stories, hearing the community ask questions, and I turned that into a solo show. So that was they were my muse, the HIV positive clients mainly, and a lot of the students. And then eventually my muse became my mother. So family is a great muse because our ancestors, especially, my mother, she was a childhood immigrant. She's Mexican, and she came here as a child, and she always would tell us these harrowing stories, and there was also a lot of comedy in it too, but it was just like, oh my God, some of the things she would tell me, it's like, this has got to be a movie or a stage play or something like that. And so family, I wrote a show about my mom. And so family definitely has been a really good muse too. So.
Did you get to see it?
Yeah, it was awesome. It's so amazing when your mom gets to see a show you wrote about her, Yeah, and so, so that's been like experiences, crap that's going on that you can't stand in the world, and then family, yeah.
All right, we'll jump over to Jessica and come back down. How did you get started in San Antonio?
I fell into it. Literally, my wife actually has a dance troupe called Zombie Bazaar. And Zombie Bazaar started actually experimenting with gender fluidity and duality on stage. And then they decided, hey, we kind of like how that feels. What if we did drag kinging? And so they started doing it, and I've always been manager behind the scenes, supporter, and then they started producing shows. And at a drag show, you need an MC. And so they didn't have an MC, and we got to the point where we were begging our theater friends to come be our MC. You probably got asked, Anna, at one point. And so she says, I can't be doing these to these folks. I'm gonna have to partner up. Maybe there's a drag queen that wants to just permanently do these gigs. And I said, drag queen? But y'all are drag kings. You can't have a drag queen do that. And I've never done any kind of performance art, but I figured I could pronounce people's names okay. And so I sat with it and sat with it and sat with it, and then finally I was very reluctant to do it, and we're, driving around doing errands one day, and the show's on Friday, and it was like Sunday before. We still don't have an MC. And I just said, I'll do it. I can do it. And so really? Okay, I'm gonna tell everyone that I got it. I got the MC. And so the first few shows were exactly what you would think. It's just disaster. I could not pronounce people's names, I learned. But but it ended up coming together. I found a persona. Thank you, Tio Bene. And once you find that, I think it comes together a little bit more. So I did it for love.
That's as good a reason as there is, right? I think we have a question from our audience. Who are you?
Hi, so my name is Martha Sines, and I have a question. Well, actually, I have a compliment and then the question. And I wanted to compliment you on the beautiful diversity of the panel. It's well represented, both from the new people that I would consider new, as well as the vintage and the historical. Seasoned. There we go.
She didn't look at me when she said that.
No. Experience. But basically, and it's also because Ms. DeLuna touched on it, is diversity, especially, and this goes to you specifically, George, and all of the panel. Have you found an accepting diversity on San Antonio stages, or have you found that your own artistry is a catalyst for diversity and showcasing?
Well, you have as many art forms as there are people on the planet, because each individual person is diverse. And the 10 of us here, we're all schizophrenic and bipolar. So the 10 of us here are pretty...
I'm tripolar.
Tripolar. Okay, well, the Earth is bipolar. We all know that, it's north and south, But the thing is, in San Antonio, there were so many parts of San Antonio. You go on the west side, and there was every state of Mexico is a part of the west side. Every faction of the Mexican Revolution is in another dimension, in who sided with who, and whose grandfather fought with Carranza, and who was with the Madero, and who was with Pancho Villa. So that diversity of the west side is where I grew up. And the other thing is that we grew up in a neighborhood. There were the Lebanese, the Karims, the Atis, the Lahoods, all of those lived in our neighborhood. We had people from Lebanon, the Azars as well.
Jesse Trevino.
The Jewish population was there. There were just so many of that diversity. There were German. In our neighborhood, there were guys who were German POWs that after the war decided to stay in the United States, and they were living in the west side of San Antonio. So diversity is what San Antonio is. The water attracts all creatures. And my experience, it didn't really hit until Hemisphere, when I worked at Hemisphere. And I just saw how many people from all over the world were coming to see San Antonio, and that was a pretty amazing feeling. So I don't know, it's a chicken and the egg situation, but we're pretty diverse here, and we're lucky. Houston, they say, is the most international city now in the United States, but San Antonio is there's something about it that attracts people. And they don't want to leave once they get here.
Hemisphere's theme was the confluence of cultures, which is diversity manifest, right?
Right, and I
So
agree.
does that help at all? Understand?
No.
That's what my wife says.
Because I guess I should have been more succinct in the fact that I wholeheartedly agree and embrace your perspective that we are a diverse culture in San Antonio as far as population and history. Were the stages, existing venues, accepting of your diversity or did you have to create your own venue?
Okay, now I know where you're going. The venues suck. The last time we really had a good theater was when it was the Alameda, the Maya, the little carpas that were on the west side, Patio Andaluz, the Valencia building. Those were where people could perform and do great theater and great music. But the downtown theaters, the Little Theater, Theater Performing Arts, the Tobin, which I don't like the name of, it should have been the Memorial to the Fallen Victims of World War I, the original name, Municipal Auditorium. But those places were not very accepting, if that's where you're going. And we do have to work on venues. TPR has taken a big step by bringing us into the building. It's a good thing that y'all did this because we don't have another radio station in town that even talks about this stuff.
Thank you for that. Credit where it's due. I didn't actually assemble this panel. I believe it was Tori and/or Kristen Beno. So credit to them for that. Now, how did you get started in San Antonio, Brian?
Well, my story is probably pretty typical for an academic and probably different from my colleagues here in that, well, I was going to graduate school in Lawrence, Kansas, and I finished my doctorate in 2009, and there was one huge problem in that those of you who are old enough to remember or who are paying attention is that was the year of the Great Recession, right, where the stock market was cut in half and jobs are drying up, particularly academic jobs in the arts were drying up left and right at the time. I personally saw many positions that had been announced have to then retract, saying we are closing our position. We're not going to hire this year because of funding. Fortunately, Texas had jobs that year, and I managed to land a tenure track position at University of Texas at Tyler. So I lived in Tyler for 2 years. And when the announcement came open for a composer of classical music, which is such an unusual career plan, right? But when that position came open at Trinity University, I pounced on it and was lucky enough to land the position. That was in 2011. And I have been here ever since, though I was almost scared away immediately because one of my wonderful colleagues at Trinity, Carolyn True, who is a dynamite piano faculty member, she called me before I'd even moved here and asked me, she told me that 2011 was the Beethoven year for music in the city. That's when the symphony was playing a lot of Beethoven symphonies and the chamber ensembles are doing a lot of Beethoven works. And she asked me if I wouldn't kindly arrange one of his last works, his monumental, massive Grosse Fuga string quartet, which is about a 15-minute long string quartet. There's about 20,000 notes in it. Asked me if I wouldn't arrange that piece for her performing ensemble, the Soli Chamber Ensemble, which is a quartet but of a different instrumentation. And so I thought, what have I gotten myself into coming to San Antonio in the middle of this Beethoven thing and having to arrange the Grosse Fuga? The Grosse Fuga by Beethoven is probably the closest thing to noise music that there is from the classical genre. And so it took me a couple of months, but I ended up doing that. But that's how I landed in San Antonio, and that was my first performing or composition opportunity. Quite a doozy.
Thank you. And Tanesha, what was your first?
I've been sitting here thinking this whole time. So I moved here in 2016 from Florida. The Army brought us here. My husband was in the Army. And I went straight to school. So I went to SAC and then Texas State to get my BFA and then straight into my MFA. So I feel like I was under a rock the whole time in the books. I graduated last year in 2020, and now I'm like, okay, let's make art. Let's go. But up until that point, I was teaching at studios around town, just trying to get my name out there. I met a great group of women, some of which are in this crowd here, that also practice and dance. And there aren't a lot of modern contemporary dancers in San Antonio. And so when you find them, you are going to be my friend. We are going to make dance. We are going to make things happen. So I think in 2016, 17, sometime around there, SADU, San Antonio Dance Umbrella, was still around. And so I Brittany Lopez at the time was the president. And so I was like, you're going to be my friend. Also, how can I make this happen? And just getting myself out there, being a teaching artist, just being persistent. And then just having enough, I don't know the word, to get out there and just do it, to just try, to maybe put it in unusual spaces, and just see how the audience takes a hold of it. And there was something else I was gonna say on the question that was asked from someone from the audience. It is hard, very challenging to be a Black dancer in San Antonio. There aren't a lot of people who look like you. When we first moved here, honestly, my husband and I were like, where are all of the Black people? Just the area that we were in, there weren't any. And so it was like, okay. And then even fewer of those are dancers. And so now as an artist, I have some ideas and creations that I need Black bodies for, right? And so I'm like, how do I tell these stories if those bodies aren't here? Like, how do I get to share these experiences? There are a couple, and I'm begging them, that maybe used to dance or they're considering it. But I do think that looking the way that I look has helped me in some spaces, whether it's for whatever reasons. It has helped. It used to just be it's Black History Month, Juneteenth performance, right? And it was like, there's 10 other months and lots of other holidays, and I don't always. Yeah, so that has gotten better, and it has put me in spaces that maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't have been in. Sometimes I question that. Am I there because they needed a Black person? But I choose to look at the positive of it, right? I am here. I am being this spokesperson, and then maybe more people will come. Maybe people will follow. And until then, I'll just continue to share the stories and the experiences and just do my part as an artist here in San Antonio.
It might be that you had some talent, too.
Well, okay, fine. Yes.
Anna, how about you?
I went to Southwest High School here, and then I went to UTSA. And after graduating from there, I decided that's when I started really like doing a lot of plays in town. And then I realized I didn't have any training at all, because at that time UTSA didn't have any theater classes. And all I wanted to do is like get some training. And so I decided to go to New York. And so I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and did that for a couple of years. I ended up staying in New York for a few more years after that. But I really got worn down by the weather. I never thought that would be an issue for me, because I always thought, oh, great, snow, that's going to be fun, And it was like the blizzard of '96 that would never go away, And so eventually I was just like, I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to like work here for a year and move to Los Angeles. But I keep saying that every year, and I keep staying. I think a lot of it is because of family and helping my family out, and that could still happen, because honestly, I'm trying to do a lot of solo stuff, and it's really difficult in San Antonio to make it as a performing artist, and it's getting, some years are good, some years aren't. We now have more funding opportunities with the city for individual artists, because there's a lot of funding for organizations, but not for people who create their own work. And then also some of the spaces, as answering her question over there, they'll, like some of the theater companies in town will do their, maybe they'll do like one show that has a Latino story to it. And that's a problem, because our city is, if you feel like you're not represented here, imagine if you're 62% of the population, but every time you go to a show, it's only like, right, it's like, what's going on here? This is kind of strange. And so if anybody's interested in getting more into it, because we can go on and on about that issue, but actually certain things have been going on in town and about that. And there's going to be a meeting on Thursday at the Lermas, which is on Culebra and South Zamora, just to talk about these issues. It's really, important for us to get together and address these things and discuss, hey, these are important issues. We don't want to waste our time. We'd rather just be performing, but I guess, we have to do these things. So anyway, I'm happy to be here. This is my hometown. I love it. But I also have to, be critical of it too.
It's the only way to get better, right? All right, I have a kind of respect for performance artists that I love all artists and all art, but people who have to be their best on this night, at this time, on this stage, that's a pressure that not all artists know, right? All right, well, let's start with you again. And do you have a pre-performance routine to get you to that
okay.
place?
So like I do a lot of solo shows, so I have to go over all my lines before, and sometime during the day. And then of course, you want to like do your physical warm up, your vocal warm up and stuff. And then I try to get to the space early and, just like do my stretches, my vocal warm up and my hopefully have all that taken care of. And then I like just put on like really relaxing music and I sing in my head. I was listening to NPR and they have Shankar Vedantan's show, Hidden
He's
Brains,
great,
one of my
isn't he?
favorites. And he did this one show about like stage fright. And there was this one expert, like how do you deal with stage fright? And she had this routine where she would like right when she was terrified of public speaking, and then she had to do public speaking. And so in her mind, she started singing that song, like, take it easy, take it easy, just right before she go on. And
don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But just like not thinking about the work at all, you've already done it. You've rehearsed, your ass off. You're prepared. Your stuff, and everything's good to go. And your heart, it can be racing, and it gets better and better with the more and more you do it. But still, like, oh my God, I'm gonna go out there by myself for like an hour and 15 minutes, and everyone's just looking at me, And so I just like, and don't think about don't think about anything. And then, okay, yeah, that's what I do.
Do you have a pre-performance routine, Tanesha?
At my house, I like to have dance parties, which most people would consider really bad dancing. But it's my jam. Just turning out a playlist that I have, and just doing really bad dance moves. I mean, that's it. And then I'm like, oh, well, if I can do that at my house, I can. Yeah, that's it. Besides that, I do some deep breathings before I go on stage. But yeah, a private little dance party, it's good for the soul. You should try it.
How about you, Brian?
I found that I'm a pacer. I pace back and forth before any kind of performance. I was doing that earlier this afternoon. My wife's like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, I'm pacing because I'm trying to get in that headspace. But it really depends on if it's something where I'm the one on stage performing. And if so, then I echo what my colleagues have been saying. There's definitely the vocal warm-up. There's some kind of physical routine. There's certain things I don't do. I don't like to eat before a performance because
You have diarrhea or something.
yeah.
Well, I don't
told
eat.
him to
I don't
eat
eat
a
either.
sandwich.
I can't eat. But afterwards,
Oh yeah, like we're eyeing those cookies back there, but
Yeah.
but because who among us feels at their sharpest after a big meal? So it's not conducive to a good performance mental state. But if if it's on the other side of things where I've written the music and I've been with the ensemble when they're performing it, it's a different side of things because maybe I'm not the one actually on stage for that, but it's still my work that's represented, and then. Especially if the ensemble is not in a state of total preparation, I have to tell myself over and over and over again that the beautiful thing about new music is that nobody has a clue what it's supposed to sound like. And so if they just play the notes like they're the right notes, maybe they will be.
Well, George, you have different types of endeavors that you do, but do you have a warm-up for different types?
Yeah, for me, tuning a drum before pre-show is really good because most people think drums aren't tuned, but it's a really, really nice mathematical and geometric thing. and I do that, knee bends, and then I go get sick.
Really?
After all these years, I'd say 60% pre-show.
Wow.
I'm behind the bleachers or somewhere. And then breathe deep. And then the hardest thing about being a percussionist is you have to remember the tempo. And if you're going to have to start something at 92, you got to make sure it's locked in your head. And the second song starts at 88, and the third one is at 130. And you have to be so focused about time. And it's just, if you lose it, then you can't play it. And it's like vocalists that are singing a cappella. They got to know that starting pitch. It's got to be so embedded. So for me, it's the pre-show ritual of tuning gets me to where I have to be. But
Tuning drums and puking. I mean, that's pretty easy, right?
how many of us, we all do that, and nobody knows it, but we all get sick because you're about to ready to give all of your energy to a total group of strangers. And that's scary, when you're giving and you're that naked.
So those of you who are performance artists understand that this guy's been doing it for decades, still goes through the process you're probably going through, right? How about you, Jessica?
Well, I'm not going to eat a big meal anymore right before. And I normally carb up. My ritual starts a week early where I decide to not prepare at all. Drag is all about the outfit. I will pack my outfit 10 minutes before we have to leave the house. My wife loves that. I've got to wear all kinds of things underneath this getup. I can't find it most of the time. I promise you that I will not know my choreography. When we're backstage, I kind of hover and just kind of hover above everyone while they're getting ready. And should anyone ask me anything about the show, I scold the children. I am their drag father, and they will ask me nothing before show. And then I realize that I'm not welcome in the backstage. So these are all true statements. And so I go and welcome the audience. I knock down that fourth wall, just kick down that fourth wall and go and welcome everyone for coming in and giving us a chance. Because no, there is not diversity for drag kings in San Antonio. We have to make our own. So real quick on that, we are drag kings second. We are activists and community members first. So we like to call ourselves dragtivists. So the majority of our performances are for community within community spaces. Shout out to the Bonham Queer Bar for giving us space. Don't go to the Strip if you want to see a drag king show. They've never heard of one. But yeah, the Bonham, the Esperanza, Southwest Workers Union, Planned Parenthood, Lilith Fund, anyone that you can think of that is out there doing Urban 15. Where's Kathy? Oh, George, you here? Kathy's up there. Shout out to Kathy. So, yeah.
So what about education background? I know that doesn't apply to each of you equally, but what do you have to say about it? Do you think it's important to get, your degree from school or in your, I was about to say in your profession, but I don't think there is one here, right?
No, I think it was important for me to get my degree. I know that my parents were very proud. I know that it's something that I really wanted to do. I'm an alum of the Mexican American Studies program at UTSA. So very, very proud of that. And I learned a lot about my culture, and now I'm doing this, and my culture is just kind of pouring out of the art that I do. So yeah, for me it was very important. Not necessary for drag, but in the Mentirosos we have a professor, we have soon-to-be PhD students. I don't know if they've already started. We have other college graduates. We have organically intelligent kings. It's a beautiful thing.
How about you, George?
The biggest thing is that you just got to find the right mentor, the right teacher, the right person who has the knowledge. It just so happens they might be the lady across the street or it might be Mr. Portillo who has an orchestra, or the TV repairman who used to make noises, and that's how I got into electronics. Or it might be a faculty member in a high school or in your college. And if you find the mentor, you're going to get educated. It just so happens along the way you may also get a degree. But you go to the source. And as artists, we really do have to credit our mentors. And we forget a lot, that there's a long history of what y'all been doing, man. In San Antonio, Davy Crockett was one of the first drag queens. By the way. He was known as the Dandy. And his dresses are at the Smithsonian. Anyway, but we can talk about that at another time. But the thing is that San Antonio has been a great music place. I mean, always, the Julian Carrillos would show up, the Carlos Chavez's would show up, Harry Parch would be here, John Cage was here. There's just so many of the modern world came to San Antonio. And then we have a long tradition of the silent theaters and all the pianists from Mexico and the ragtime guys that came from New Orleans and the wonderful Appalachian singers that came here. I mean, so you're gonna find a teacher somewhere, and you just gotta be smart enough to realize I gotta shut up and listen for a bit.
It probably didn't take a lot of smarts. It takes feeling them looking at you and smiling and saying, "Hey, this is cool. Do this." How about you, Brian?
Well, it will come as a complete shock that the professor thinks education is a good idea, right? But no, education was very important in my family, and I went to college. But then after my first year, I actually took a year off, and I signed on with a touring musical company, and I traveled for a year. And I got a lot of education that year. We toured the U.S. for 6 months and Europe for 6 months. Starting off from this South Georgia boy in Helsinki, Finland in January up by the Arctic Circle was a big shock. But I learned a lot in that year. But I also learned this was a different era for many of you in that it was a time before cell phones. And I got used to the idea when I was touring that it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday anymore. It was travel day, it was rehearsal day, it was performance day, it was strike day, and so forth. I got really used to that. And I got used to not really knowing exactly where my next meal would be coming from or where I'd be staying and what city we'd be going to. And I liked the lifestyle, and I had an opportunity to sign on again, but I really knew that I wanted to go back to college and finish my degree. And in a way, I liked college so much I never really left. I'm just on the other side of the desk now. But I think perhaps regardless of whatever kind of art you wish to create or make, one of the best benefits of an education is that it puts you in an environment where you're surrounded by like-minded people, and you can make a lot of connections, and these people may go out and do big things, and you can collaborate with them in the future. And perhaps the educational environment is one of the best ways to make those connections happen.
Neat. Tanesha.
I guess I am next. Is it necessary to do what we as dancers do? No. When you go to an audition, no one cares if you can read. So no, it's not. I have danced with many dancers who don't have degrees, who have degrees. I don't think that it is necessary. You can learn, like my fellows have said, anything from anyone. I work with a lot of children. I am learning stuff from them all day, every day. Mostly how to use my cell phone. But yeah, social media, I'm like, can you please just do this for me? But I think a lot of learning for me has come in just from being in the studio and being with my body and knowing what I need to do and how something feels, not necessarily how it looks. You can have all the thoughts. I mentioned this earlier. You can have all the thoughts, but you won't really know how it works, the know-how, until you actually do it. And so I think there's a lot of learning that happens from the practice and just being in the work with other artists, collaborating, networking. I did meet some of my best friends in grad school. What did I learn in grad school? I don't know. No, that's not true. But yeah, I think every learning can happen anywhere. I think you just have to be open and receptive to it, like George said earlier. Yeah.
Anna?
Well, I think that especially if you're considering it, if you're a performer, and that's something like, should I go get training or should I just like do it? I say go get training, and it doesn't have to be like it's some big expensive place, you know. It could be like at community college. It could be at the university. It could be some academy in another city. I'd say get out of San Antonio and experience that. And then, and you can always come back, and we hope you come back, but put yourself out there, put yourself in like, oh my God, when I went to New York, I almost vomited as soon as I got there. Cause I saw like Twin Towers, I was, bleh, like I felt like nothing. And I just all of a sudden got like really, really nervous. But I think that it's that education, like you can have your raw talent, but for me, I personally needed that guidance. And so I'm very pro education. And also, like when you go, sometimes if you do go to academy, it could be expensive. So I understand why people wouldn't want to do that. But if you can, do it. And if not, there's some really great, like programs here, like there's SAC, even for like teenagers and, get them involved in the arts and performing arts as well. They do some summer programs, the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center for Performing Arts. There's the Grupo Heritage Taller that does, music classes for young people. And, but even like, if you're like, you go to community college, like my friend, Melissa Marlowe's here, and she teaches theater out there, and she's always like inviting, artists to go, be a guest artist there and do performances. And we're just like, I kind of thought I was a good actress before I went to theater school, and I sucked, and it was like, oh my God, you have to strip down and just like really, have a lot of people with expertise and knowledge. And then that's all you're doing when you're there. If you really just kind of go for it for the academies, it's like every day you live and breathe that art. And I think that's kind of a privileged place to be. Not everybody can do it, but if you can do it, I say yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of different views, all of which are, complementary to one another, but they're different. Obviously. Now, really engaging your audience is critical. If you could tell us how you engage your audience, and you probably don't have any one thing, but I was thinking of your kicking the fourth, what was it? How did you put it? Fourth wall, right?
Fourth wall, kick it down. So, doing drag and doing drag MC, it's crowd work. Everything that I do is crowd work, from the performance to speaking and making sure that I'm taking that space and using that space wisely, right? Talking about the things that are important to me and important to our drag troupe, like voting. And things like that, and taking up space in your queer body and being out there and making safe space for people and promoting other artists that are starting out and wanting space. So the way that I engage is talking about things that are topical, talking about things that are important. We really will just cram our culture right down your throat. And people do find that engaging. Either it's nostalgic, or it's familiar, or you have never heard of it before. We just performed a show that we called the Brokeback Cantina in, you have to go to Austin. You have to go to Austin for that one, pero coming soon to San Antonio. We do the Brokeback Cantina in Austin, and it's an 80%, white college kid crowd, and and they love it.
Their attention span.
But they're there. They stick right with us. They have a good time. But yeah, it's just giving them something familiar and also provoking thought, right? Art is provocative. You have to. Doesn't matter what you're doing, if you're lip syncing or you're doing what Ana does, which is phenomenal. It's got to be provoking. Yeah.
Well, I look for the heartbeat, and as a percussionist, and we're movement people, we're sound people, but we look for the heartbeat in the crowd and try to figure out what is that tempo that's going on in the up with people out there. And when you find that tempo and there's a unity of kind of the pace of the heartbeat, you start being able to communicate, because we're nonverbal, we're non-narrative. And being nonverbal and non-narrative in performance is very touch and go. You don't know unless you listen to that heartbeat. And you can figure out that heartbeat when you start looking at people's feet, and they are moving in tempo with what we're doing, and it's very complex thing, but it's so primitive at the same time, because we're really trying to get the community to have a heartbeat that's one. And if you can do that, there's a lot more peace involved. There's a lot more communication, and there's a lot of common exhaustion that happens after an Urban 15, one of our community concerts, is that people participate. And for us, we have our theory is lifelong participation in the arts. And that's what we're trying to do. We have a theme called A Simple Thought of From Pampers to Depends, that people be alive in the arts. And it really is about the heartbeat. And that's how we interface with the world. And, the sonogram to the last heartbeat of your life,
Brian, how do you engage? Or is that right?
Well, there's two sides. I was just thinking that probably the most common way I perform is as a teacher, as a lecturer. I always have an audience of students, and I try to look people in the eye when I'm talking, because I try to find that one person, and maybe something you're saying is going to make that light bulb moment go off for them. And it's really not that much different if I'm on stage as a vocalist. I'm still trying to sing to that one person and see if I could reach them in some fashion. But on the other side, when I'm working as composer, I have to think of who my audience is. And my first audience is the ensemble. It's the people for whom I'm writing that music in the first place. Maybe I'm performing in the ensemble and I know the people really well. If so, great. But maybe not. When I write for orchestra, I don't play any orchestral instruments, but I have to know all the instruments and how they work, their ranges, transpositions, what's idiomatic for them, and I have to know really how to write for them. And I have to write a piece of music that will make that orchestra think it's worth playing in the first place. Because if they do, if I'm successful in that job of making the ensemble excited about what it is that they're going to do, then they will sell it to the audience, and I won't have to be the one to make that case.
How do you engage folks, Tanesha?
The same. I was just thinking in the rehearsal process and creating a work, whether it's collaborative or if I'm like taking the lead on it, that first audience, the first reception of that is with the movers and the dancers that are in the space. And so having everybody latch on to this idea and believe it, like George was saying earlier, once they commit, once their heart is in it, that's the moment that's going to lead to the audience also being able to connect to it. I think one of the hard things with concert-based dance is there is that fourth wall. And people walk in and they sit and they see someone like rubbing and rolling around on the floor and they're like, what is happening? And there is no one to talk to about it. And so going forward, that's one of the things that I really want to do with dance is break that wall and maybe show a piece and then have a networking mixer and then show the piece again, right? So there's this idea of being able to talk about it and what did we just see, and maybe they didn't see it the first time, maybe they'll see it the second time, and also knowing that you also don't have to understand it, right? It could just be beautiful, and that's okay to look at something that is just beautiful, right? Or that makes you feel a certain way. So I think just connecting with people in that way about dance, and making it accessible in that way. This year I started a dance company called Somerset Movement, and we've been taking dance in unusual spaces. We've done a performance at the Botanical Garden, at the Japanese Tea Gardens. And I think those opportunities have allowed people to come up and talk to us because we are dancing right beside you. Like, you cannot avoid us. And so I think that's another way that they're like, okay, I guess where they're not moving, we are just going to move around you. And so I think that's another way, as bringing it out of the theaters, out into the community, and yeah, connecting in that way.
And you, Anna?
I think that I guess I want to probably just think about like my mother's show. It's called Carmen from Mexico, and it was just like sometimes I think, oh gosh, how am I going to get people to like this, and I was like, you know what, it's just write it and just let her talk and listen to it and then paste it together. And in her specific story, it kind of transcends a lot of, other people's family stories, especially here in San Antonio. And so I just like, you know what, I'm not going to try to worry about how to engage everybody because I won't, I can't please everybody, but I'm just going to like, let's just share this, what I know. And then hopefully people, will like it. Sometimes I feel like, especially with those, stories with immigration, it can be harrowing because, there was this like scene where she's stuck in, she's coming in the trunk of a car, or she's trying to cross the river and almost drowns and stuff. And I was like, God, this is some heavy shit, and it's too heavy, it's too many heavy scenes together. And so sometimes I think like, okay, well, she also told me some really funny stories. So you got to like also put in some, like the first time she like came to the United States, and she went to solo serve and was just like, oh my God, she had a hamburger for the first time. She didn't know what that was. She saw this yellow stuff. She didn't know what mustard, what's this, And it's just hilarious. She didn't want to eat it. And then she finally like ate it because it just smelled so good. She thought it was weird because it had bread, on it and meat. It was just, I don't know. All she had was like corn tortilla. She didn't know what bread was. And so it was funny, and then also she liked to sing a lot. And so I was like, you know what, you can't do like some really harrowing story for an hour in 20, 30 minutes. You got to like, hey, now I'm going to sing this song that everybody likes, So sometimes it's like throwing in a funny scene, throwing in some musicians on stage with you, to get it going. They're like, oh yeah, I like that song, You
have to give people a breathing space.
Yeah, because it's too much. Yeah,
they're...
sometimes it's too much, but definitely the comedy helps because I want to laugh too. And so like my favorite thing is like if I can hear people crying and then I can hear them laughing, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome.
Now, part of being a professional artist is balancing your artistic vision with the commercial aspects of being a working artist. How do you approach the business side of what you do? Whoever wants that first can take it.
We sell stickers.
Well, I think what they had in mind with that question might have been like, are you active on social media? Do you network with folks and try to get the word out that way, I guess?
No, absolutely. It's free, right? Social media is free. So we are on there. We post once a day. So that way we stay in your algorithm at Los Men 210. Yeah, we post every day. That's how we communicate with folks. That's how we get bookings. That's how we promote our shows, promote ourselves. We are like a family in Los Mentirosos, so we also do member highlights and talk about people's personal lives and their personal achievements. So social media for us is absolutely everything. And we do, through social media, we sell $3 stickers.
Well, we've survived pretty much by word of mouth, recommendations, and people recommending our ensemble to a friend. And so even our big work, like with the convention or the hospitality industry, we get phone calls from somebody that says, I was in San Antonio 5 years ago and I saw you perform, and my company's coming to San Antonio next month. Can y'all perform for us? But word of mouth has really been an amazing survival skill to develop, and you get a very loyal group of people that are always asking you to perform. We are pretty good at making a presence, worldwide footprint because of our streaming work. But again, people who trust that you're going to do a good job are going to tell their friends that you're going to do a good job. And I had one of our mentors, a teacher, who once said, "Don't try to be spectacular. Don't just always do it right, because the chances of being spectacular are going to rise astronomically."
The sum of everybody doing the right thing becomes
and
spectacular,
eventually
right?
it's going to blossom.
Yeah.
So word of mouth is really important, and trust to friendships. We are all with the social media stuff, but paid media has not been, except for TPR, has been not that successful in San Antonio. We don't need to buy, space on the TV stations or anything. We have a good audience, and it's very loyal.
All right, I have been told that we need to kind of wrap this up. They've got a time schedule, so I want to thank you all for coming in. You were fascinating and fun and ridiculous at times, but thank you all. Where do we go from here?
Thank you.
We're wrapping up. Oh, yeah, you know what? We were supposed to hear from you. What is it? Do you have any final things to say?
Oh, yeah. If y'all want to go ahead and wrap up the last question, take your time on that, no worries. Afterwards, we're going to move into a brief intermission, about 5 to 10 minutes, and we have a very special performance for y'all. Los Mentirosos will be performing for us in here, so we invite you to stick around. And thank y'all so much again for being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. We greatly appreciate it. Oh, yes, and we want a picture, if you're available.
So if anybody has any final thoughts that they would like to share, I mean, you've shared a lot already, but if you've got something else that we didn't touch on, please do. Yeah.
I'll try to make it quick. I'm a lecturer, right? So, but you don't have to be an island. No one has to be an island. I'm always in settings like this. I'm thankful for all the people who are behind the scenes who help make something like this happen. I'm thinking of all the people who are making this event happen right now with lighting, with audio and stage management and so forth. It's wonderful. But I guess I would say, because I can see people of all ages here, and you may not really know if you have the talent to do anything, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but there's one way you've got to find out, right? I decided at the ripe old age of 42 to try something that I never had the chance to do before. I decided to try martial arts for the first time. I never had an opportunity as a kid to do that. My parents would not have been into it. We wouldn't have been able to afford it, but I decided to try it, and I've been doing it for 2 years now, and you know what? I really like it. And maybe I'm probably never going to be the professor who is also an MMA fighter at the same time, but maybe it will be a forever hobby for me, but it's a new avenue for growth that I didn't know I had, and you could do something similar no matter what age you are.
I became a arts and culture reporter when I was 59, so, that's very true.
I did want to say something too, like even though he's right, I do like solo shows, but there's really no such thing as a solo show because you have like so many people helping you and you need that help big time. And I have a bunch of artist friends that help me produce, sometimes even help me co-write, when I feel like, oh my God, this is just going to totally fall apart. And just ask people for help, and you'd be surprised at like how many of your friends, oh yeah, I'm there. If like my friend Izabella is here, and one time I was like, I need somebody to kind of like watch this play I wrote called The Aisley. I need some direction, because I'm just doing it by myself in my apartment, and I need like I need a director.
Objectivity.
Yeah, and I've had lots of my friends do that for me. So yeah, definitely it takes a village of the community coming out to help you.
Tanesha, you want to say anything?
I'm excited to be here. Yay! More dance in San Antonio. But yeah, same thing. Networking, connecting with other artists, ones who maybe do things that you do, maybe those who don't. For that outside eye, I am learning the balance of it all, of trying to start a company and be creative and also do the computer stuff. Like spreadsheets make me cry. I actually text my sister that today and was like, why is this existing? So yeah, finding that balance and then reaching out when you need help. And people are willing and ready to help. Who would have thought? You just had to ask. Yeah. So connect, collaborate, do all the things, have fun, and have a private dance party. That's good for you.
George.
Just thank you very much to TPR and the city of San Antonio, DAC. These forums are very important. And I ask people that if you like food from another culture, go out and buy a CD from that culture. Because once you start liking their food and their music, you don't want to bomb them. You know, and that's the thing. We can make peace if you like other people's food and their music.
And Jessica.
I just want to invite everybody to our next show. It's going to be here in about 10 minutes. We'll see you there.